Hi everyone and welcome to this week's WARNO Dev blog. The guys at UGen have posted a little bit later today, so this video will be going up later than usual, but I'll try and rattle through it as quickly as possible. So this week we are getting a look at the Milestone Massena, which is the next big milestone coming to the WARNO Early Access. I will note at this point, of course, that WARNO is currently 25% off for the Steam Summer Sale, so if you are interested in getting into WARNO and getting into the Early Access, accepting of course that it is still in development, then now could be a good time to pick it up while it is discounted. But moving on. First, they want to give us a little bit of a background about Massena. As you know, we name all of our milestones after famous French marshals during the Napoleonic Wars. André Massena was Napoleon's ablest lieutenant during the early days of Bonaparte's campaign in Italy, and later was even nicknamed Massena the Dear Child of Victory. He was also the marshal originating from the lowest social ranks, and a tarnished reputation surrounded him as Massena became notorious as among the worst looter of the French army, and surprisingly very stingy. Very active during the early years, isolation crept in for Massena. Italy was relegated to a secondary theatre after the action moved to Germany, Poland and Austria. However, our general had a thunderous return in 1809, when, with the Grand Army being fixed in Spain, Napoleon had to turn to Massena and his troops for support. The apex of the general's career came soon after, during the battles of Aspern, Essling and Wagram. Unfortunately, our aging Massena soon lost his vigour and energy. Sent to invade Portugal, he endured terrible hardships. With the invasion ending up in failure, Massena retreated to Spain before being forced home to France. He was never to see active field service again, playing no real importance during the rest of the Napoleonic Wars. He went on to die of natural causes in 1817. So moving on, what will Massena bring? WARNO's next milestone, Massena, will introduce two German divisions of a new type, Territorial Commands. For our Steel Division 2 veterans there, think about the Koruk? Someone from Steel Division 2 will have to explain that one to me. Please do in the comments below. Now, these commands were tasked with securing the rear area of the main NATO and Warsaw Pact armies against special forces and potential airborne assault operations. They guarded key locations, infrastructure, ammo and fuel depots, artillery and other army assets. Although made up of second-line troops and equipment, these new divisions will be well rounded, in no small part to the heavy SAM and artillery forces they would be guarding. These will make them ideal candidates for a defensive or support deck. Within WARNO's war scenario, these Territorial Command divisions would likely square up against the airborne divisions from the recently released LAN milestone. Our territorial forces would aim to pin down and prevent the paratroopers from reaching their objectives. So let's have a look at one of the divisions in more detail. This week we are getting a look at the Territorial Commando SUD. So obviously we are starting with the West Germans. Now, in the real life, the Territorial SUD was more of an administrative command than a field one, controlling traffic, performing basic counterintelligence, security, etc. The formation was situated in both NATO CENTAG and SOUTHAG area of command in central and southwest Germany, obviously. However, should an airborne assault occur during our World War III scenario, or perhaps Warsaw Pact forces making a lightning breakthrough, the Territorial SUD would have been in command of all the rear units. This includes 2 full reserve brigades with tanks and a plethora of smaller formations. One important feature of the Territorial SUD is that while the division is composed chiefly of rear-line units, it will receive some foreign support. In the case of a breakthrough and unopposed Soviet drive on the Rhine, there would be one particular nation rather desperate to prevent the Soviets from advancing through CENTAG to the border, the French. As a result, Territorial SUD receives some reinforcements from France's Armée de l'Air and the 4E Division Air Mobile. The latter was France's only air assault division. Though more the size of a small brigade, the formation is equipped with a ton of Gazelle combat helicopters and a regiment of heliborne infantry specialised in anti-tank warfare. This means that a lot of Frenchies lugging around the land systems. So what units are you going to get to play with? Well, the logistics category is pretty much standard with an emphasis on heavy movers and suppliers. You get to play with the Mancat 6x6 truck and the CH-53G helicopter. There are lots of cheap infantry slots, including many veterancy-locked Jaeger, Heimatsuchen, and some Sicherung squads, including M40A1 and Milan 1 anti-tank teams, as well as some Field Jaeger and Pioneers Jaeger infantry, which can deploy in an M113A1G transport. The rest of the soldiers in soft-skinned vehicles. Next to the Germans, some French air mobile squads, as well as the Milan 2 anti-tank teams in a Super Puma helis, are available. Tank category is average both in terms of slots and quantity. Alongside the Cannon Jagdpanzer, we encounter the mainstay of the German tank reserve arsenal, the M48 Patton with its 90mm and 105mm variants. The latter is an upgunned version with the M60 Patton's main gun, giving it the same firepower but on a smaller, weaker chassis. Finally, the French P4 Milan 2 offers a light but fast, powerful anti-tank destroyer. Moving on to anti-air, it is one of the stronger categories. With the formation's task of protecting SAM sites, you'll be getting quite a lot of affordable anti-air units, including the monotube FK-20-2 20mm, as well as the good old Flak L70 Bofors. Consider these very effective against choppers. Other units include the Roland 2 and Roland 3 units and the towed Eyehawk, and to round it out you will also get to deploy the Fliegerforce squads. The artillery forces of the Territorial SUD are pretty strong too in terms of availability and price, but come mostly as towed units, including the 120mm Tampella mortar, the 105 FHM-1A2A2. This model is already used as a placeholder for the 82nd Airborne Division's M102 unit, and the 155mm FH155-1, another name for the FH70 deployable with our existing German divisions. The only self-propelled artillery will be the older HS-30 Panzermörser 120mm mortar carrier. Recon is clearly not going to be this division's strong suit. There is limited availability and choice, including the Aufklärer 4-man squad, the Jaeger Aufklärer squads, as well as the French Gazelle Lissy unarmed, and a Gazelle Cannon 20mm autocannon recon helicopter. Lacking a helicopter force of its own, the Territorial SUD instead relies entirely on French assets. This comes in the form of the Gazelle Cannon, a Gazelle Hot 1 and a Gazelle Hot 2. Air support is pretty decent, with several variants of the Luftwaffe F4F available in anti-tank bomber and fighter roles, as well as the new F104G bomber variant with its Mark 83 bombs. The French Armée de l'Air lends additional support with single card each of the Mirage 2000C RDI fighters and the Mirage 5F cluster bomber. Territorial SUD is a pretty good defensive and support division. This is because of the many cheap infantry and tanks, allowing it to hold the line against enemy attacks. However, the formation lacks modern equipment to be confident on an offence, especially main battle tanks, armoured transport carriers and self-propelled artillery. And that's everything for the Massena preview this week. Please do come back to a look at the Warsaw Pact division next week. Obviously, we are also waiting on a new patch, a balance patch specifically, so please do keep an eye out for that, and I hope you all have a great weekend.